Drawing freehand in ink can be a bit of a scary thought, but in many ways it's not as difficult as we think. And let me explain the strategies I use when I draw freehand in ink. Now, firstly, it's really important that we get our angles right when we draw buildings. If they're not right, it will stand out at the end and spoil otherwise good work. At this point, I don't know how long I want these lines to go, but because I'm drawing the same size, I can have a sense of how close they are to the edge of the paper. So I make sure I don't draw them as far as they need to go, and then I can add the difference. I think starting with these veranda poles, veranda supports, is a great way to go. It's important though that I pay attention to the spaces between them and the shapes that are formed, because as the poles move away, they get smaller as the top line of the veranda angles downwards and as the bottom line of the porch angles upwards slightly. Always important to pay attention and find out where the upward sloping lines become downward sloping lines. That's where we have our straight line. That's the eye level. That's the level of the camera when I took a photo of this house in Hobart in Tasmania recently. So I also need to establish this rail. The rail is really important because it does change our perception of the shapes that we create in the veranda between the posts. And so I had actually done a few marks just positioning where the rail was going to be to make sure that the shapes I got above the rail were still how I wanted them to be. And we have to allow, in a drawing such as this where we're drawing a lot of detail, we have to allow for the thickness of the pen. This is a 0.3 millimeter pen, although I am drawing it with a very light touch. So it's possibly a thinner line a lot of the time. Now notice at the bottom of the building there, I just did a dotted line. I didn't do a straight line or even a continuous even weight line. And that's because that very seldom creates the effect that we get visually where a building touches the ground. It's often a division where we have little shadows being thrown up by bits of gravel and stone or weeds or simply unevenness in surface. So we don't want to create a smooth edge when there isn't one. You'll notice on my drawing, particularly with this overhanging veranda roof, I draw lines just to help me see more clearly exactly how things align with what I'm drawing with what I've already drawn. It also means we pay attention to our reference more carefully. So once I've established an initial part, such as this front veranda section, I can use that now to reference parts that I haven't drawn yet. If I think it's accurate from the reference on my drawing, then I can reference the photo, and then I can also reference that same section from my drawing. You're watching me draw this double time, so if you want to see the real time, just use that cog icon to halve the speed. And of course, if you're finding this helpful, then it would really help me out if you could hit the like button right now for me and leave a comment at the end and let me know how you found it. And if you'd like to have a go drawing this same building yourself, I will post this photo on my channel community page and you can draw it as many times as you like. There are a few parts of the video where I have sped it up faster than double time, just where there's some very repetitive line work. So I'm paying attention to the angles. You'll notice, here you see me now position that top corner and also measure the angles. You'll see me use my pen in this way to measure angles, particularly the perspective angles, but it's not just perspective angles, it's any angle. And one way I can check whether my roof is lined up properly is to see whether the angles in life, in the photo, work on my drawing. Now, another important thing to remember with buildings is that architectural elements such as these dormer windows that line up horizontally if we look straight at the building, then they also have to follow the perspective angle pattern. Every horizontal line on the building that moves upwards above eye level has to increase, even if it's just slightly, in angle. And that includes lines such as the bottom of the dormer windows, the top of the dormer windows, and the apex of the little roofing element of the dormer windows. And again here you can see me just looking to see where are the tops. Because of foreshortening, the peaks of these little dormer windows of their roofing isn't directly halfway. It's further away than halfway. Because visually our scene compresses as it moves further away. And this house is sloping, not a great deal, but it's sloping a bit away from us, from right to left. And as it slopes away from us, it actually gets further away. And it's enough to trigger the perspective appearance that we see. And it's the cause of the perspective appearance, that we're not seeing this building from the same distance all the way across its front. And you can see me just checking my angles, and almost right. The smaller, further away dormer window perhaps shouldn't be touching the other one, but that's not the sort of discrepancy that's crept into my drawing that I'm going to give a moment's thought about. So now I need to establish the rest of the roofing, and I'm checking the angle, and what this tells me is that the line really has to go further out from the edge of the building than I have it at the moment. So I just push it a bit further out because I want to get the angle correct. So we're getting the bare bones pretty much in place now. We have these chimneys, and as you can see how I'm aligning them with what I've already drawn. I wouldn't necessarily draw all of these lines on my reference, though I certainly do if I think I need them, but for the sake of this demo, I'm drawing them just to help indicate what I'm looking at when I'm looking at my reference and how I'm working out what I need to draw from what I have drawn. Sometimes I know that my drawing isn't as accurate in relation to the reference as I would like, and therefore, even though I still do this alignment, I consciously then adjust my drawing to bring it back into alignment a bit, but not to create something that visually, though, doesn't look right. In the end, I want my drawing to look right, and I can make adjustments if I need to. But if I want to learn to draw accurately freehand in ink, so there is no pencil used on the paper at all for this drawing, then I really need to learn to observe everything I need to observe before my pen hits the paper. That's really the thing. We often think that we don't draw accurately because somehow we lack drawing skills. I would suggest that it's not our drawing skills that are significantly out of place. It's actually our ability to observe what we need to see on our reference to then be able to draw it accurately. We can't draw past what we've seen, and it's actually that observation. I hammer this point over and over again because it's simply not intuitive. We think we know how to observe and how to look because we do it all the time, and we do it adequately for most of life. But when we draw, there's a higher level of observation and of critical thinking to work out exactly what parts do I need to observe and how do I need to observe them so that I have all the information I need at that stage of my drawing to put the marks on the paper. And the fact that this is sped up so much possibly is a bit misleading. This drawing took me about 40 minutes to do in real time, not 14 or 15. But as I said, for most of it, if you use the cog icon to slow it down to half speed, you'll be able to see part of it at least at the speed I was drawing it. And that can be a helpful thing when we're learning to draw. But I would suggest that if anyone is not particularly experienced in freehand ink drawing, it would be good to go even slower, because it takes time to observe and to work out what we're going to do with that observation that we've got. But basically now I'm looking at the spaces in between the columns, and I'm using those spaces in regard then with the photo to position these two windows and the doorway between them. Now, I was confident of the accuracy of my veranda, but another way I've done this is to position the two outer windows first, so that then I can make sure that the door looks, in terms of my drawing, in between the two of them. You'll notice when I did the two dormer windows on the top, I actually did them both at the same time, because I wanted to make sure that they looked symmetrical and looked in the center. And if I drew one and then drew the other, then it's easy not to line them up exactly with the bigger picture, with the overall view of the house, and the fact that we know that they're meant to be in the center, and that they're also meant to be the same size, but affected obviously by the perspective angle. So the order in which I did them was very important in my way of thinking and strategizing in drawing to maintain accuracy in that respect. And now very quickly, just a little bit of light hatching, just to give a sense of 3 dimensions more with underneath the veranda. And now just a few quick lines to indicate the guttering. I've left out the cars because I thought they were a bit of a distraction to the architecture. Sometimes they're good to leave in, especially if they give a sense of scale, but it's quite clear with this house, with this domestic architecture, what the scale is, so we don't need them for that purpose. If I was going to draw any of those details, I might have drawn the car to the lower left, because it does provide a nice contrast of shape and line, and possibly even of value. And very quickly now with this paling fenced, and I'm doing extra hatching over it to also reflect the colour, the local colour. And then there's just a few more details, and then I was going to leave it like this, but I thought it looked a bit of an orphan sitting there by itself, so I decided to use a very light touch with my pen, and even less detail than I've drawn on this main building, and do that suggestion of a house to the left, and also of the mountain range, the low mountain range coming down on the left, and just a hint of something similar on the right. And then I realised that I could probably add a bit of texture to this rather thinly rendered stone wall, and then just trying to think, what more do I need to do? Do I want to add a few more details here or not? But I think the important thing is that we look at our reference and we think visually, what's the impact, and have I created that impact, and will more lines create that impact more accurately, or will they actually detract? Will they actually become cluttering and obscuring? So knowing where to stop is also important, particularly freehand with ink, because we can't erase anything at all. But it's a tremendous way to force us to observe more carefully. And if you think you have trouble with observation, then can I suggest that you stop drawing with pencil for a while and commit to drawing in ink, and in a sense force yourself to find what you need to find to be able to draw what you want to draw. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Look, I hope this was interesting. As I said, please remember the like button if you haven't hit it already. But look, whatever you draw and however you draw it, freehand in ink or if pencil or erasing half of it or whatever, make sure you have fun, and I'll see you next time. Bye.